somebody once said the CFA exam, like the Mississippi River, is a mile wide and an inch deep. So you really had to study a wide array of different topics to make sure that you were up to speed on the common body of knowledge that's inside the CFA.
And then the last month, spending every waking hour studying for the exam and hoping that they would ask you the questions you studied.
You mastered material if you went over it 3 times. So that was essentially the principle that I used.
So I came up with a plan of starting to study for the CFA exam every January through June. And I would get up at 4:30 in the morning, drive down to my job at Trust Company of Georgia, SunTrust Banks now, and study until 8:30. And I would do that every day until the exam was given.
And my study group, and that's the only reason I passed, was because I literally organized a study group every single year to help me, A, go through the tons of material, and B, make sure that I got the benefit of the wisdom of the other people in the study group that I invited in.
A good friend of mine worked for Sonny Ellis, named Jay Levine, who was a subsequent president of the Atlanta Society. And we talked about it. We used to drive to work together, and we talked about it, and he said, well, I'm going to do it because it's probably going to be the easiest the first year. What calculator did I use for the exam? Was a slide rule, yeah. And my fingers.
In level 1, we were still not allowed calculators. Slide rules were permissible, but they had decided that calculators would make too much noise and people might not be able to plug them in to outlets.
In an access of caution, I took 2 calculators and 1 slide rule into CFA 2. First, 1 calculator died, then the second calculator died, and so I ended up using the slide rule.
The original HP 12C that I used to take the level 1, level 2, and level 3 exam.
I always had a ritual that I would go through on my way to the exam center at Emory. I would stop at the McDonald's right outside the campus and sit down and have a cup of coffee and an Egg McMuffin and just relax and just feel comfortable and just spend some time not thinking of anything.
I guess the most dramatic thing is that the exam itself is very stressful and it's time constrained. In one case, at one of the exams I was at, and this was the earlier days, in 1980, one of the examinees that was sitting on my row had a calculator, but it was a plug-in, so she had to plug it into the wall. And unfortunately, somebody who was coming down the aisle didn't notice that the power cord was plugged in, tripped over the power cord right in the middle of the exam, sending her calculator flying into the wall where it shattered into 1,000 pieces. And the poor woman who was doing the examination screamed like a soul tortured in hell because her calculator had been completely destroyed. Fortunately, somebody found a backup for her.
And I got into the exam and I opened the book, and they tell you that, you read the question, and if you can't answer the question in the first 10 seconds, move on to the next question. So I looked at the first question and I couldn't answer it in 10 seconds, so I moved on to the next question, and I couldn't answer that one, so I moved on to the next question, and I couldn't answer that one. So I moved on to the next question, and I couldn't answer that one. I was getting darn close to the end of the book, and I couldn't answer any of the questions. And so I was greatly worried, and that left a great impression on me.
When I was taking 2 or 3, there was an assistant at Robinson Humphrey who was pregnant, and she needed to leave the room during the exam, and she was not allowed to. And it was after that that the rules were changed and you were allowed to go to the bathroom if you had to during the exam.
I was so darn nervous that when the proctor said start, I had my pencil right on top of that blue book, and it was sharp, number 2. And it tore through, I screamed out loud, and it tore through 5 pages of my exam book.
I don't recall whether there were many other women Actually, I don't remember any, but I wasn't paying attention to anything around me.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's fair.
One of the things that I noticed was that there was another guy from a brokerage firm who was taking the exam, and he was kicking the table and muttering obscenities under his breath at how difficult the exam was.
I don't remember the specific moment or where I was for each one of the 3 exams, but I remember a tremendous sense of relief because I was in line to be president of the Atlanta Society, plus being in the business, and not to have passed would have been quite awkward for me. So I remember it all very well in that respect.
And I still remember my son saying, "Mom, now that you've passed this CFA exam and all the work you've put into it, are you going to make $1 million now?"
I was awarded the charter in 1984, and it was probably the happiest day of my life, or close to it. Surpassed only maybe by my wedding day and the birth of my children.